Welcome to the region of Paldean, Pokemon's first ever open world game. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, for the first time ever, you'll be able to battle the gym leaders in any order. You can take your own path and opt to play the game any way you want. For the first time ever. Options for your first badge include, but are not limited to, fighting the gentle baker Katy, fighting the artist Brassius, getting curb stomped by a Twitch streamer, having your throat ripped out by Larry Staraptor, dying in a snowstorm, and much, much more. Level scaling, good one. So what are you waiting for? Pokemon's most non-linear region is waiting for you today. One of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's biggest selling points was the idea of non-linearity. This is the idea that you can fight any gym leader in any order you want, which is technically true, but because every gym leader and major fight for that matter is locked to a specific level cap, well, this leaves very little room to actually diverge from that scaling path. So even though you can technically fight every gym in any order, what if you could actually fight any gym leader in any order? Well, today we're going to build dynamic scaling teams for every gym leader in the region. And we're gonna start things off by looking at the technically first gym leader, Katy. Now, as a little background for those of you who don't know me, I've made ROM hacks for the first 3 generations of Pokemon. And one of the big things we actually did with that series is make it so that certain gym leaders can be fought at different levels. And we actually built out multiple teams for them, and the one that you fight is determined on the number of gym badges you have. And so for the likes of Katy all the way through to Grusha, we'll be doing the same thing, but giving them teams for badges 1 through 8. Now, as the technical badge 1 gym leader, Katy's team is running Nimble, Tarantula, and Teddiursa. Now, I want to try to leave their base teams alone as much as I can, but there's gonna be some cases where I'm just like, I don't know if I really agree with that decision. And so depending on the circumstances, this is one of those circumstances, we are going to change their base team. Nimble is a bug superhero. I don't know what that has to do with a baker. More importantly, I just think what a crazy choice giving her this was when Combee is in the game. Combee is a bee, which is associated with honey and pastries, and Katy is a baker, and it's just like, why didn't they make that connection? So Katy's new badge 1 team is going to be Combee, Tarantula, and Teddiursa. Now, for a badge 2 challenge, we want to generally take inspiration from Brassius, who is the second gym leader's difficulty. As the intended second gym, Brassius is also not really that difficult, so we're just gonna raise Katy's levels up from 14 to 15, up to what Brassius's are at 16 to 17. Then we're gonna swap out Teddiursa's Fury Swipes with Covet. Fury Swipes is just a hard move to balance, and I really like the idea of Covet on Teddiursa, where it's like this bear that loves pastries and is like stealing your Pokemon's berry. Feels appropriate, and overall this isn't a massive power spike. Badge 3, however, is. In my opinion, Iono is the hardest gym leader in the game. On top of that, the rest of her team all have like pretty solid stats, and overall it's a very difficult fight. The point is that we wanted to try to make Katy's badge 3 relatively equivalent to that level of difficulty. So first off, she's still going to lead with her Combee, which we really like this because it's one of the faster bugs that can actually possibly get the jump on your team. And it's now gonna have Skitter Smack, which lowers the opponent's special attack. After that, we're going to have Spidops. And then because Iono has 4 Pokemon, we're gonna add one in here, and it's gonna be Ralor. Not Ralor, the god of fire from Game of Thrones, the bug Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet. Now, this thing's gonna have Mudshot to deal with rock types and fire types, and will also help lower your speed. And all this is sort of working to nerf your team down before Teddiursa can come out. Now, Teddiursa doesn't evolve to level 30, so we'll leave it as is for now, but instead we'll crank its learn set up to help with that power output. Slash, Fury Cutter, Rock Tomb, and Trailblaze, plus the Citrus Berry should help to make this feel relatively strong. Now, as we move on to Gym 4, the big change here is that Teddiursa is finally hitting level 30 and getting the evolution. We're also going to evolve the pure bug Ralor into the bug psychic type Rabsca. This is actually a notable power buff since it gets 115 special attack, but for just the 4th gym, we're not trying to go crazy yet, so we just want its bulk, and this fight will just keep Mudshot and Bug Bite, which are physical attacks. And so yeah, while Kofu, the technical 4th gym leader, only has 3 Pokemon, that's stupid. Like, they intentionally make Iono so hard with 4 Pokemon, and then they back that off on Kofu, and it just is really weird. And so for all 4th gym leaders, and 5th gym leaders for that matter, we're going to make sure that they all have 4 Pokemon. Now, as we move on to the 5th gym, I wanted to note, you may have noticed this, is that her Combee up until this point has been male. And we did that because Vespiquen actually evolves at like level 21, and we didn't want her to get Vespiquen before she got her ace. It's finally here though, where Katy is going to hit on her lucky honey tree and get a female Combee, which will now evolve into Vespiquen. Now, in our legacy games, we found that the appropriate difficulty for the 6th gym is typically to go with 5 Pokemon. But seeing as this is not a ROM hack and we're trying to make something probably closer to like a 3rd title of Scarlet and Violet, I think we'll just keep it at 4. But the fun thing we're gonna do for the 6th badge fight is make it always a double battle. This lead is gonna have Rapska with Rain Dance to weaken fire moves, plus Spidops with Bullet Seed to cover any cheeky water types. More importantly, it will now also have the move Sticky Web. Any Pokemon that comes out after this move has been laid down actually loses 1 point of speed, which is really important for her bug types because they're typically quite slow. Now, we'll expect that Vespiquen and Ursaring will likely be out on the field at the same time. So Ursaring is going to get Bulldoze to add to its learn set, which will hit all enemies on the field except for Vespiquen. And now, as we move on to the 7th badge, this is where we're actually going to add our 5th Pokemon. Now, listen, I know that it's practically unheard of for 7th gyms to have 5 Pokemon, but by this point, you are going to have 5 Pokemon, and if they don't, it just becomes really easy. So sure, it's not within Pokemon standards, but it also makes things way cooler. And speaking of cool, let's get to that 5th ad. So if we think about this team so far, it actually has all been playing into the theme of a bakery. Verlore's thing is pushing mud balls, and so I feel like that ability could be translated into pushing dough. Spidops is like playing with his webs, and I like to imagine that's like stretching the dough. Combee line is related to honey, which is like the thing you drizzle over the pastry. But before we can get to that drizzling, what do we need but something to actually cut the dough? So we're going to add Scizor. Now, while Scizor does have a 4x weakness to fire, it's great because it covers one of this team's biggest weaknesses, which are rock types. Scizor is also just really sick. So yeah. Next, that brings us to the 8th gym. We've rolled the dough, we've stretched the dough, we've cut the dough, we've slathered honey all over it. We've got our big friendly bear ready to eat the pastry, but the last step that you need in the process is, of course, to cook it. And what better bug to do so than Volcarona? Running Heat Wave, Bug Buzz, and Quiver Dance, this is the power spike we need to make a bug trainer viable for the 8th gym. Also, just a fun thing I think we should do for every gym leader is for their 8th team, just give their ace Terra Blast. Now, fun fact, you've actually been reverse clickbaited, because we're actually going to give you a post-game fight too, which is more content than you signed up for. Jeez, I know what I would do if I was in that situation. Anyway, a big part of the reason we're doing this post-game team is so that we can actually feature a Hisuian Pokemon from Legends Arceus. And so as the first one, this kind of sets an example. We're going to swap out Scizor for Cleaver. Its typing is really nice for her weaknesses, but on top of that, it's just a really cool Pokemon that deserves the spotlight. And then of course, the big change that we need to make is swapping out Ursaring for Ursaluna. On top of the obvious power spike, one other really cool thing about this is that Volcarona represents the sun, while Ursaluna obviously represents the moon. And so ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have our first gym leader down. With that said, you should also probably have a better idea of how we're gonna be formulating this, so we'll go through the next ones a little bit faster. Now, if I was a trainer in the Paldea region, I'd be a dark leader, and my first Pokemon would be Umbreon, which represents this watch that Holzkern sent me. I love it when trainers revolve their team around a specific style, and in this case, Umbreon represents the Midnight Black aesthetic of this watch, which is called the Relational. And continuing with that theme, the next Pokemon I'd use is actually Ghost-type Goldango, who is here to represent the Rose Gold trim. Now, Honchkrow is the big boss of Pokemon, just like our sponsor Holzkern is the big boss of watches and jewelry for both men and women. Holzkern products are made out of natural materials, and you'll notice the dial is made of black marble. What's that, dark rock? Well, gee, I guess I gotta throw Tyranitar on my team. Now, just like the uncommon Larvitar, these products are made in small batches to ensure ethical production. And unlike the life of Tyranitar versus fighting types, every product comes with a 2-year guarantee. There's free express worldwide shipping, where most products arrive in 2 to 5 days, and if you use code SmithPlays, you will get 15% off your order. So you can scan the QR code on screen or click the top link in the description if you're looking to level up that today. Oh, and last Pokemon would be Darksteel Kingambit, because I mean, come on, you know the dude could rock a watch. Badge 2. Brassius. Moving on to Grass Leader Brassius, who is the technical second badge of Paldean. And this is the first case of where we're going to be working backwards. We have the template for Gym 2, and we actually need to work back to Gym 1. Now, personally, I kind of feel like Brassius is a little bit easy. So we're just going to basically copy and paste his Gym 2 team, lower the levels, and remove Sleep Powder off his Petalil. Sorry. And so then as we jump back to his Gym 2 sort of base team, we've got basically what you guys would know having played the games. I'm gonna add Charm on Petilil just because I feel like he could use a little bit more utility. And I feel like Tackle is already pretty bad by the second gym. So we're gonna give his Small of Swift. And that's pretty much it, right? Sudowoodo makes for an incredible ace on a grass team because it continues to have Rock Stab, which covers ice and fire and flying and bug types, which are almost all of Grass's weaknesses. They did a really good job with Brassius, so we're just gonna keep this going through the rest of the gyms. Now, back to Gym 3, again, think Iono. We're adding a fourth Pokemon in Applin. I'm a pretty big fan of the Applin line, so I thought it would be cool to add different variations of this Pokemon onto his team. So we'll start off with just base Applin with Pounce and Astonish. Petalil will also swap Mega Drain for Giga Drain, and then we're gonna throw Bulldoze plus an Oran Berry onto Sudowoodo. Now, you might be thinking like, is that a lot? But again, Mismagius going electric type with Levitate and crazy moves, this is still not as strong as that. Now, as we move on to Gym 4, our Pokemon raise up to like 29 to 30. We're also gonna see Smoliv evolve into Dolliv, take the lead, and run Swift, Seed Bomb, and Grassy Terrain. Petalil stays unevolved, and then Applin evolves into Flapple, running Wing Attack and Dragon Breath. And at 410 base stats, Sudowoodo is actually already getting a little bit weak, so we're gonna give him a Citrus Berry to help his staying power. Now, at Gym 5, we're finally going to see him get Arboliva, as well as finally Lilligant. And as for the Applin line, we're going to switch it up again here, and he's now going to run Appleton. And as for Sudowoodo, it's one change. We'll be swapping Rock Throw for Rock Slide. Now, 6th gym, once again, reminder, this is the doubles battle. So our leads are going to be Arboliva with Terrain Pulse, Hyper Voice, and Leech Seed. The big strategy is Arboliva's ability Seed Sower, which makes it so that when it gets hit by an attack, it lays down grassy terrain, which is just gonna help him for the rest of the fight, basically. Well, you know, unless you take more than 5 turns, imagine that. And then the other Pokemon that we're gonna have here is Lilligant, running Sleep Powder, Light Screen, and Giga Drain. Sleep is obviously great utility. Light Screen gonna further help the plants, you know, not get burned alive. And then we're gonna keep Appleton, but it's now gonna run Grassy Glide, which gets priority in grassy terrain, as well as Dragon Pulse. And at this point, Sudowoodo's going to run Trailblaze, Rock Slide, Fire Punch, and Ice Punch, plus a Citrus Berry. And then finally, as we move on to Gym 7, we're adding in our 5th Pokemon, which is, I decided on Scovillain. Honestly, this was a bit of a tough choice. There was Bramblegast, a few others that definitely made sense, but I just think Scovillain is a really cool Pokemon, and I wanted to see it on this team. Arboliva with Seed Sower will stay the lead, and Scovillain will be the second last out, running, of course, Sunny Day with Chlorophyll. And I think the spacing will work really well because if Sunny Day is up and Sudowoodo comes onto the field, it can still hit like stab rock moves onto a fire type. Now, the other thing we're doing here, and this is getting like a little competitive, is we're adding an Assault Vest onto Sudowoodo. Like, I know that Game Freak would never do this on a gym leader, but balance-wise, like, the dude needs it. Okay, he's got 65 special defense. That's fine, but 410 total base stat is pretty sad at this point. And boosting his special defense up to like 97 would actually like continue to keep Sudowoodo as a strong ace. Otherwise, he's just getting one shot by like stab flamethrowers. So it's the best we can do for the man. And then for Gym 8, we're basically just keeping things the same, but you know, slightly improving the moves. One notable thing here is Lilligant with Own Tempo and Petal Dance. Fun combo, really strong. And then as we move into the post-game rematch fight, the new ad we're gonna throw in here is Hisuian Lilligant. It's a fighting grass type. It's a really cool Pokemon from Legends Arceus. Just another example of kind of the Pokemon we're trying to throw in on these rematches. We're also going to turn Appleton into Hydrapple just because it's a bit stronger and a bit cooler. Badge 3, Iono. So now that we're on to the 3rd gym leader, we have to work our way backwards through 2 teams instead of 1 like Brassius. Her original team is Wattrel, Bellibolt, Luxio, and Mismagius. So starting with her badge 1 team, we're gonna have her running a Tadbulb with Shinx and Misdreavus. Super low power, basic balanced moves, again, trying to sort of imitate Katy's team. And then as we move on to badge 2, the only thing that would change here is Shinx evolving into Luxio. And listen, as for badge 3, I'm a sucker for difficulty. I love Iono. I will not change a thing about this beautiful team. But Iono is an iconically difficult and fun gym leader. So the question is now, how do we keep that difficulty through the rest of the game? And this is tricky because electric gyms tend to be more difficult towards the start of a game when you don't have access to a ground Pokemon or at least ground moves. But Iono does a pretty good job of this with Wattrel, which we're going to evolve into Kilowattrel for her Badge 4 fight. At this point, it'll run Spark, Aerial Ace, and Electro Ball. Bellibolt is also a really great Pokemon for Iono because it has water coverage. And so moving into the 4th badge, we're going to trade out Water Gun for Water Pulse. And I hate Confuse Ray. I think we all hate Confuse Ray. So we're going to swap out Mismagius's Confuse Ray for Magical Leaf. As for the 5th gym, Kilowattrel is going to swap out Spark for Thunder Wave, which is going to pair really well with Electro Ball, which its damage fluctuates based on how much faster it is than you. Bellibolt is going to add Mud Shot, and her Luxio is finally going to evolve into Luxray. And that takes us to the 6th gym double battle. Kilowattrel makes a great lead because it's immune to ground types. Luxray is then the obvious other lead, which has Intimidate, which will hit both of your Pokemon with a -1 attack. We're also going to give it Electric Terrain because so far everything has had some sort of effect, air effect, ground effect, whatever going on. So we'll keep that running. Actually, that's it. The rest of the team stays the exact same. I think this would be an awesome fight. Like, I would love to challenge this. I'm so curious to see how it would play out. Now, as we get to Gym 7, this is where the diverging path starts. Do you try to set this up to be a Rain Dance Thunder team, or do you run with Volt Switch shenanigans? Let's be honest. We all know that Iono would definitely run with Volt Switch shenanigans. We love Volt Switch shenanigans, so we're gonna run with Volt Switch shenanigans. So for Gym 7, we're gonna do like an Elisa Emolga thing with Kilowattrel, flying electric, running Volt Switch. And the other Pokemon with Volt Switch is her newly added Pawmot. Once again, there were a lot of electric types that I would have liked to add, but Pawmot is just pretty awesome, and it fills in a nice spot on her team for coverage, so that'll be added in here running Nuzzle, Volt Switch, and Close Combat. What's also cool about this is that if it does manage to live after a close combat, it can then Volt Switch out and reset its lower defenses. And at this point, we're also going to throw a Citrus Berry on Mismagius because gotta make it stronger somehow. And then for the 8th gym, we're going to throw Volt Switch onto Luxray as well. So 3 Volt Switchers, and the big one about this is that Luxio has Intimidate, so it can intimidate you, swap out, and do it again. You've also got the Revival Blessing on Pawmot, and overall, I just think this is a really solid team. This should hopefully keep Iono feeling like Iono, which is just a notoriously difficult fight. Now, as for her post-game fight, I didn't want to remove any of her core members, so we're gonna swap Pawmot for Hisuian Electrode. You get what I'm doing now. We're throwing in a bunch of Hisuian Pokemon from Legends Arceus. This is great because it's really fast and is a grass type, so it just wrecks ground types, which is exactly what she needs. And overall, she's just cooked up super hard, still awesome. Badge 4. Kofu. Kofu's weird. You go from the incredible highs of Iono back in number of Pokemon and way down in difficulty. Like, I think even with the level gap, there's a case to be made that Iono is harder than Kofu. On top of that, his team of Veluza, Wugtrio, and Crabominable is weird to say the least. So we're gonna try to keep true to his kind of vibe, but also expand upon it. Now, working back from his Badge 4 team, his Gym 1 team is going to see a member change with Aerocuda. Veluza is a single stager, and with like 475 base stat-ish, it's just too much for the first gym, but Aerocuda has a similar shape and has a roughly kind of similar base stat distribution, so I think it makes for a good like placeholder until we get to Veluza. You can't really take Veluza out, right? Because like the only thing I remember about this guy is like, I don't know, like jumping Veluza or something. So we'll eventually get to that. Anyway, for Badge 1, we've got Aerocuda with just Peck and Aqua Jet. Peck covers grass types. And then we've got Wiglet with Aqua Jet and Mud Slap to cover electric types. Crab Brawler actually has pretty good stats, so it's going to make for a fairly formidable Gym 1 running Rock Smash and Bubblebee. As we move on to Gym 2, Aerocuda will add in Bite, and then Wiglet's going to throw in Headbutt. As for Gym 3, this is where we add in our 4th Pokemon. Kofu is all about food. Why didn't we add the sushi Pokemon? Like, dude, Tatsugiri, I know it's a dragon type, so like it is good, but like, it's a sushi. And plus for the 3rd gym, right, thinking back to Iono, which adds a fully evolved Bellibolt, we're just added in Tatsugiri, which has like the same base stats and is a really strong and good Pokemon. We all love Kingdra, Water Dragon, it's great. It's gonna have Icy Wind, Water Pulse, Simple, easy, done. And then since Crabrawler evolves with an Ice Stone, we'll just evolve right here to Crabominable, which kind of mirrors Mismagius. Which actually means then for Gym 4 that his base original team is going to have an added Tatsuguri. Again, it's so weird that he has 3 Pokemon, adding back in Veluza, evolving Wiglets. I just really think that this should have been his team. Now, as for Gym 5, the big change is just Crabominable getting Brick Break and Ice Punch, which is just finally some powerful physical attacking stab moves. And then that takes us to our double battle. I know that Tatsuguri is obviously very involved with the Dragon of the Lake quest. I might be wrong here, but I feel like the Dragon of the Lake quest is really revolving around Dondozo, so I don't want to give Kofu that, but Tatsuguri is still a pretty solid support Pokemon, so what we're actually going to do here is give it Helping Hand. Veluza is also going to pick up Psycho Cut here, so it should be able to do some pretty good damage as Tatsuguri sort of sets it up. As for Gym 7, the moves continue to grow, but the big change here is that we're adding in Tauros Aqua Breed. I mean, look, if we're talking food, you got to add in the cow, right? That's steak. Fighting Water is pretty cool, also has some pretty good base stats. Overall, I'm a big fan of this thing, and I just think it fits his actual job vibe really well. A little surf and turf, if you will. Badge 8 just once again ups the moves and adds Terra Blast onto the ace. And for post-game, I actually want to remove Wug Trio and throw in Basculegion Female. Kind of like the vibes we've got of Veluza as like Water Psychic, Basculegion Water Ghost. Ton of water types out there, but this once again allows us to feature a Legends Arceus Pokemon. Badge 5. Larry. Now, if Iono is not the hardest gym leader in Scarlet and Violet, it's because you probably got stomped by Larry. As the 5th gym, we've got a lot of working back to do, and this is going to require a little bit more finagling. Kamala is a single stager and pretty good, so it doesn't really work for Badge 1. So on top of Starly and Dunsparce, Larry's Badge 1 team is going to feature Lechonk. And then for his second badge, we'll evolve his Starly into Staravia, which I think is pretty on par with like that of a Sudowoodo. A little bit weaker, but Intimidate should probably bridge the gap. And then as we move into Badge 3, this is where we will add Kamala. Lechonk will also evolve into Oinkologne, and we'll continue adding in some better moves. Now, as for Badge 4, this is actually pretty much the exact same, but as we go to Badge 5, this is where things actually get pretty interesting because now Larry actually has 4 Pokemon. Look, Larry's not as weird as Kofu because he actually has a good team, but he's the 5th gym leader. Like, he should still have 4 Pokemon. Now, it's also by the 5th badge that I think Oinkologne, I think it's had its time in the spotlight. It's not really all that strong. And so we're actually going to swap it out for Mousehold. Now, Mousehold is nice because it continues to fill the role of a Paldean normal type, but not only is it better, it also has Friend Guard, which is perfect for a double battle. Mousehold also works nice here because family is a theme commonly connected to work-life balance problems, so it continues to play into Larry's vibe. At this point, Staraptor's also gonna go crazy, and as we move into the 7th badge, we're actually going to add Hisuian Zoroark. Now, up until this point, we haven't actually just straight up added a Hisuian Pokemon, but this is the exception because it was actually available as an event on day 1 of Scarlet and Violet releasing. And it's really important for Larry, who up until this point has probably had some issues dealing with ghost types. I also really like the idea of having a dead normal type on Larry because it fits his theme of like hating his job and just being mentally checked out. And again, ghost is great because it helps with his fighting weakness. As for Gym 8, we're gonna pick up the moves again, add Population Bomb on Mousehold, and of course give Staraptor what it wants with Brave Bird, Facade, and Close Combat. Now, as for the post game, I think the weak link here is Kamala. So we're gonna continue with the sleepy vibes, right? The tired from work vibes, but we're gonna throw in the king of tired from work vibes, and the ad is actually going to be slacking. Also, since this is post-game content, we'll throw a Flame Orb on Staraptor just because why not? Normal teams always make for an interesting post-game team, and I really like how this sort of sits in contrast with Larry's Elite Four team. Overall, I think it's really great, and it suits the man very well. Badge 6. Ryme. Building Ryme was a little bit tricky because you're faced with the question of like, do you make her fight single battle if they're not the 6th fight? I ultimately landed on it just feeling really weird to fight Ryme in a singles situation, so we're just gonna make all her fights double battles. Everything from the 6th and on, however, will be the only ones that are like really optimized 4 doubles. Now, as the 6th badge fight, Ryme finally does have 4 Pokemon, and she's running Banette, Mimikyu, Houndstone, and a Terra Ghost Toxtricity. Working all the way back to badge 1, we're gonna have her running Shuppet, Graveyard, and Toxel. This will say the exact same on badge 2, and then for badge 3, we're gonna finally add in Mimikyu. Now, it feels kind of weird to go with the Toxel evolution here. I think you could, but I had a more fun idea. Toxel has this really cool move called Belch, which is like a ridiculous amount of damage, but you can only use it if you've eaten a berry. So I thought it'd be more fun to give Toxel a citrus berry so that if you like take it into that range, it's then a monstrous threat that has also healed back up quite a bit. And then as we move on to Toxtricity, this is where we'll remove the Belch gimmick and just go with more normal moves. And then her badge 5 team would be pretty much the same as her badge 6. Badge 7 then has the addition of a new member in Annihilate. Annihilate is great because its fighting type allows you to hit dark types for super effective damage, plus just it has really good stats. And then badge 8 will just once again fully flesh it out, adding in Terra Blast on the final gem. Reminding you guys once again that we're not trying to go full legacy difficulty here. We're trying to keep things relatively close to Game Freak level design, but upped just a bit for like that of a 3rd title. Now, as for the final fight, I actually really like this team, and I don't think I'd want to change it. The only Hisui and Ghost types that you could add would be Basculegion, which really doesn't give her anything like extra unique. Or I guess you could do Ceruledge, which is just a Gen 9 Pokemon, but you could also do Hisui and Typhlosion, which is unfortunately a starter, so that's why I don't really love that idea. Badge 7. Tulip. Now, a lot of people have said that they find Tulip to be really difficult, and because I was a Skeledirge player when the game first dropped, I never really got that experience. For the 7th gym leader, you should just have more to deal with your weaknesses than Tulip has. The other thing is that, like with Kofu, Gita actually shares a member of Tulip's team in Espathra. Now, in that video that we made like 2 years ago, recommend you go watch it. It's a great video. But in that video, we actually removed Gita's Espathra, and I think we'll continue with that theme and leave Espathra for Tulip. So starting with her badge 1 team, she's going to be running Ralts with Confusion and Disarming Voice, Flittle, the first stage of Espathra, running Peck and Confusion, and Flabebe with Fairy Wind, Stored Power, and Vine Whip. One of the things of all these aces is that they have a move of the trainer's type, and we can't really give Flabebe Psychic yet. We shouldn't. So I thought it would be cool to just throw Stored Power on here, which is like really weak at this point. But then as we move on to the 2nd badge fight, we'll up the levels and give it Calm Mind. It's a Flabebe, so it's got really weak stats, but if it gets 1 or especially 2 Calm Minds in, it is going to get quite threatening. And then for the 3rd badge add, it's going to be Girafarake. Now, this actually has higher base stats than Floette, which is kind of weird, but Florges feels like a lot here. Like it has 550 what base stats. So what we'll do instead is just leave it with Calm Mind and Stored Power, but now as a Floette, it's just even that much more strong. Kirlia also evolves to get Psybeam, and Flittle is pretty bad, but it at least has priority Baby Doll Eyes. Now moving on to the 4th badge, this was actually really lucky because all of the non-ace Pokemon are level 29, which lets her keep Kirlia and not get a Gardevoir, because for the 4th gym, we do want to finally evolve her ace into Florges. And then as we move on to the 5th badge, she'll add Gardevoir and Espathra. 6 is her double battle fight, and this is where Farigiraf's gonna come in. She's gonna lead with Gardevoir running Psychic, Draining Kiss, and Reflect, and Farigiraf is gonna have Psychic, Crunch, and Psychic Terrain. For this fight, Florges is also going to drop Stored Power, running Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, Magical Leaf, and Calm Mind. And then on the 7th gym, it will run Psychic, Moonblast, and Petal Blizzard, as you know, plus Calm Mind. Now, when thinking of what her final Pokemon should be, there were actually a lot of decent options. From a just typing perspective, I really like Medicham, which again is dark coverage. Medicham is unfortunately not really super in line with her vibe. There's also Bruxish, which is like kind of ironically working for her, but also like not really and isn't all that good. But the one Pokemon that is just so perfect for her is Gothitelle. I actually find it crazy that she doesn't have a Gothitelle in the base game. I guess Gardevoir is kind of feeling the exact same role and is stronger, but vibes wise, it's just perfect. It also has some really good TMs to help her coverage, and we're actually going to teach it Foul Play and Focus Blast on top of Psychic. Also, Espathra is going to get Lumina Crash because it's like the one thing that makes it really good and it doesn't have it in her fight, and I feel like that's also part part of why she's not as good as she could be. And for her last fight, I thought we'd actually bring back the stored power Calm Mind combo, add in a citrus berry for a little extra staying power, and this will give Florges that just like absolute crazy setup power that's sort of reminiscent of like Pokemon Emerald. Now, as for the post game, of all the Pokemon that I would add to her if I could do anything, it would be Galarian Articuno. Legendary, so we can't do it. And I actually think I just want to leave her team just like this. I would, however, move her Farigiraf to the front, give it Light Clay, and then have it setting up Reflect. There's also the potential for, I guess, like an Alolan Raichu, but at the end of the day, I just like Gothitelle so much, I don't want to remove it. And finally, that takes us to Grusha. Now, I've actually made a video where we talked about Ice-type trainers where we fixed Grusha, but one of the things I did for his final team was give him an Alolan Ninetales with Snow Warning, which isn't in base Generation 9 decks. And the same applies true for Mr. Ryme. This is a good team, but not very appropriate for Generation 9 now that I look back on it. So we're just gonna make a very slight change. Backing up all the way to Grusha's first team, we're gonna have something a little weird going on here. Now to start, he's gonna have Snom with Powder Snow and Struggle Bug, and Cubchoo with Powder Snow and Fury Swipes. This is actually a great example showing just like how perfect Ice-type trainers are for early gyms, and that's what that whole video was about. But when you get to Swablu, things get weird because Ice Beam is like the weakest damaging ice move it learns, and it needs to have an ice move. So because this is Grusha, and like if you're fighting him first, you've traveled all the way to Glacido Mountain, we are just gonna give this Swablu Ice Beam. It'll have Ice Beam and Peck. It's kind of strong, like it doesn't even have that great special attack, so it won't hurt that much. It just feels like a lot on the first gym, but it's really the best we can do. Moving on to Badge 2, we're gonna give Cubchoo Chilling Water just to sort of help with that Fire Rock weakness. And then for Badge 3, the Pokemon we're gonna add in is, of course, Citadel. Grusha's Cetitan is awesome, and Citadel is actually strong enough that it kind of fits that Iono mold pretty good for Badge 3. Frostmoth is also not the strongest Pokemon for Badge 8, and so we're going to evolve it here for the Belly Bolt equivalent. Also, like, Swablu doesn't evolve till level 35, so this kind of still has to be a Swablu. So we're gonna keep Ice Beam and add in Acrobatics, which is a strong move on what will still not be a super strong Pokemon. We'll also throw on a Citrus Berry just to give it a little additional staying power. And then for Badge 5, you really can't delay it any longer, so we'll finally give him the early evolved Altaria. Now it's at Badge 5 where he's finally going to evolve his Citadel into Cetitan, and finally, Weebra's happy, I know. Well, maybe sad? I guess sad because no more Cubchoo and Weebra likes Cubchoo. But anyway, Cubchoo into Beartic. And then finally at Badge 6, it is time for Snow. So in Grusha's original team, he has a Cetitan that doesn't take advantage of Slush Rush, which is like Chlorophyll for ice types. Like, that's stupid. And so since pretty much all the other double battles have had some kind of like effect going on, we're gonna go for the Snow setup on this team. We'll have Cetitan leading along with Frostmoth with Icy Wind to additionally check speed. Now, as for Badge 7 and 8, my original final team that I made for Grusha was Ice-Q, Mr. Ryme, Alolan Ninetales, Cetitan, and no Altaria, because in that video, we actually wanted to just make Cetitan his ace so that we could take advantage of Slush Rush strats, but that video had a very different goal from this one. This has been a bit of a different exercise, and it's kind of led us to maintain actually like all of his team, but just make it better. So we've actually just got one Pokemon to add. Now, as you may or may not know, ice types are pretty easy to counter as you get to this like super late point in the game. So we need to make Grusha strong. I would love to throw in Alolan Ninetales here, but if we're going to say that is off the table because it's not in the Paldean Dex, there is one Snow Warning Pokemon that is, and that's Abomasnow. You just kind of got to do it. It's the only way. Snow Warning automatically sets it up, and then like all his team has a defensive boost. You've got Cetitan cooking with the extra speed, the crazy big bulk, and Blizzard is 100% accurate. It's really the only way. And I really kind of miss seeing Altaria with Earthquake. So we're gonna go with Dragon Pulse, Ice Beam, Earthquake, and Roost. And then I actually think what we'll do is move my sort of final team that I made in that other video onto his post-game team. Except we'll swap out Mr. Ryme for Hisui and Avalugg so we can finish and continue and complete off our Pokemon Legends Arceus post-game theme add-in. And so ladies and gentlemen, that is Scarlet and Violet if it was actually open world. I also just want to finish this saying that like anyone criticizing Game Freak for not doing what we've laid out here is being a little unfair. If you were to make the game open world like this, you'd also have to do it for all the other like Team Star members and arguably just like the rest of the trainers, which would be so much work. So it's not really fair to criticize Game Freak. Obviously, I would have loved it. Obviously, I really hope that we do get a true open world in Generation 10, but this is what it would look like had they done it in Scarlet and Violet. What would you change? What do you think? Have you subscribed yet? If you want to know what Gita's final team would be in this remake version, you can go watch this video. There's another suggested video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye. And also, please make sure to check out Whole Screen Watches by scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the top link in the description. Huge shout out to the legend Whole Screen for helping the channel and supporting our content.